Okay, you are live.
Very good. Thank you, David. Thank you to the Hyperledger community for giving us the opportunity today to present the finding on our independent security code review of the Ursa library. My name is Pierre Roberge. I'm the general manager of the Digital Identity Lab. I'm happy to share that today's presentation will be available in French later in June, scheduled for June 23. I see some of my my French colleague in the Zoom, so there will be another presentation June 23 in French. I was told that we're welcoming over 140 people across the globe today, so very happy to have you, and be aware that this event is registered. I will ask that you present your question in the chat, but we will answer those questions at the end, and I will be assisted to do that. Very good. So today's presentation, the agenda, brief introduction about the IDLab. We need to do a bit of level setting about Hyperledger and Ursa, but the meat of the presentation today will be in the genesis, the scope, and the engagement process, describing the engagement process, the finding, and the summary. Today's meeting is really tailored for the Hyperledger enthusiast, for the decentralized identity practitioner, and other digital ID program and project manager. If you're really looking at if you're particularly looking at the crypto, at the security detail of the review, I invite you to look at the full report that has been published. It's on the website of the Hyperledger research website. I've put a URL encoded. I've encoded the URL here for your convenience, and this is where you'll find all of the details for that will be presented today. So if you want to learn about the journey we went through, if you want to learn about the scope, the conclusion, please stay with us. Small clarification, I am not a cryptographer, and while I'm happy to present here today, I just want to make that clear, so there was again a bit of level setting. So very briefly about the Digital Identity Lab. The Digital Identity Lab is a not-for-profit organization that exists, that its mission is to accelerate the conformity and the interoperability of digital identity. Ultimately, we're an arm's length independent organization that exists to promote the adoption of digital identity. We're technology agnostic. We are not an incubator, and we do not develop or sell digital ID technology. So about Hyperledger and Ursa. So some necessary context setting here to start for everybody's benefit. Hyperledger, multi-project open source community. It's a technology stack, primarily looking at blockchain technology and related tools. And there is many use of the and adoption of the Hyperledger technology and digital identity rollout. Ursa specifically is the shared cryptographic library that is being used. That's an opt-in repository for the various Hyperledger project. It's being used today by Indy, by Aries, by Fabric, and by other. There's many benefits of having this modular shared library. One is to avoid duplication. The crypto implementation are notoriously hard to implement. So having a single library makes it easier for the implementation, avoiding unnecessary duplication of extra work, and make it easier to apply security review and exercise and activity like we've done with the report. The shared library is also the place where we can have a team of, there's a team of security and expert that can review the implementation. So it's a single location where it simplifies substantially the review of the security analysis and maintaining the code. Ultimately, also the library provide for cross-platform interoperability. So when two projects use the same library, the same crypto, it's a lot easier for the verification because they use the same protocol on both sides. So ultimately, it's make it easier for existing project and for new project to start from the ground up. Sorry, what happened? I'm good. Okay. So Digital identity is being adopted globally around the world. There's a number of different projects. Canada is home to a number of those projects, lead both on from public and private sector organization. The Hyperledger technology is being considered in a large number of these projects. So the report finds its genesis and parts within the due diligence process required for the possible use of the Hyperledger technology in production. Already, the best practices are in place within Ursa to ensure quality engineering and proper security, but there was no public arm's length independent review that we could find. So some public and private sector organization retain the service of the IDLab to perform the security review. A quick parenthesis, Canada's birth to privacy by design from Dr. Anne Kavukian, and privacy by design is reflected in so many ways in how we deploy digital ID in Canada. So I thought it was appropriate to talk about trust but verify. So the work we've done was really in that spirit. Trust but verify. We're not expecting nightmare. We didn't expect backdoor. We expected good cyber hygiene, but it's in that trust but verify exercise that the work was done, and supporting that due diligence process I mentioned that many organizations required before they can go live to production. I want to point out that there is perceived value in open source project that working in the open and working with other like-minded community of practice is of value, and that was really the spirit under which right from the beginning the project sponsor for this wanted to make this report public, see this report as public good, and wanted to make it to the benefit of the community. So we're quite happy to share those findings today with you. So the Ursa library review, there was a number, the code was examined from a number of different angles. Entry points, coding standard, data storage and transfer, and others. You have the bullet there, but briefly. So the entry point, this is a library after all, right? So there's a large number of functions that have public scope. Binding is also present, which constitute further means to call the library from the client code. This is about 138 entry point just on C linkage, and over Rust it's over 2,732 entry points that were analyzed and reviewed. We've done a coding standard review to validate and assess that the coding standard utilized to implement in the implementation of the code. We looked at the cryptography and the key management, included but not limited to the random number generator, the key generation, the signing, the verification, and identify possible backdoor. Data storage and transfer is always part of a security review. Here we look at caching, we look at temporary file creation. That said, for this library, we really think about data storage and the responsibility of the client code that is using the data storage. API and API security was also looked at because it's a library, because it's open source. Basically, the entire source code has been reviewed to ensure that the entry point were valid and there was no issues that could be linked or identified toward that. We look at some language issue, included memory issues or race condition on cut exception. We look for logical flaws in the implementation, possible logical flaws, and we also look at the use of third-party library, particularly to assess the stability in the Ursa library. On the cryptographic side, we focus on ensuring that the use of the cryptography within the library is secure. We look at the entropy, looking at the method that the random number generation was done and if it was deemed appropriate. And we look at general best practices. So we examine key length and a use of different curve, following best practices in the industry. So the engagement process, this was about a 4-month project from inception to today. We started with a scope and definition, and I've shared those. Those were that was the previous slide I've shared. Then we identify which version of the code we wanted to use. So we used the branch for the branch version 0.3.7. Then there was examination that was done by a group of experts. Following the examination in February, there was validation. And the validation and the remediation was done together, was done in partnership straight from the beginning with the community. So we had David with us, that was part of this effort, and we also work with the Ursa representatives. I would like to name them. They've been a key contributor to the work. So Art Montgomery, Mike Lauder, Cam Para, and Nathan George. These were the Ursa representative that collaborate with us during the validation and the remediation planning that was made in place. Remediation itself will be done by the Ursa community, but there is action item and plan that were put in place, and today we are reporting and communicating with you the report for this. So I've also included in the presentation the link to the report. You added in the URL encoding earlier. This is the URL of the report, and the work again was done by a group of people. So we have the IDLab, we have the Hyperledger Foundation, the Ursa group, and Consult Hyperion. How are we doing with time? We're good. So the finding summary, bottom line there, it was a very successful review. I think we didn't expect to find any major issue, and we did not find any major issue. Like it's always good to have an extra pair of fresh eyes looking at the code, and I think there was some issues, low severity issues that were identified and were documented. There were some issues around the build process, so we need to be careful with this. There was also a minor issue with the possible vulnerability in the OpenSSL. So I think it's important to use the latest version of the OpenSSL and keep track of the vulnerability that exists in that project. But if you link the project, you inherit those. So it's important we've identified this for the community to keep an eye on, and that's primarily a build issue. There has been some minor issue related to lack of support for message authentication. Two issues come to mind. So one was around the implementation that does not check for the signature in an element of a prime order subgroup. And so that was, it's always good practices to verify the signature. And there was also something around the public key check in the libUrsa BLS module. So these issues were identified. One was identified as a low severity, one was identified as a medium severity, and both have been the severity was the setting of the severity was done with the Ursa team. I think it was accepted as this, and there's some it's being taken care of right now, right inside the community to resolve. There was some minor issue related to the subgroup validation. I will not go into the detail here. And there was one issue around breaking the unlinkability of the identity mixer using malicious key. This is probably the biggest surprise in the biggest surprise in the review. So basically, it was identified that if you have a malicious issuer in an ecosystem, they would be way for the issuer to that wanted to collude in the marketplace, and that could be possible. So further research is being done on this to create more efficient way to do the proof generation, and the community is looking at addressing this through the general process. I'm going way faster than I was planning. All in all, The review concluded that the Hyperledger Ursa project was well maintained, good engineering, good practices in place. Basically, a clean bill of health could be described as the outcome of the review. The main contributor to the report, I want to thank them for their work: Neil Kettles, Matthew Barker, Justin Gage, Liz Roy Francis, Bruce Daly. Thank you very much for your contribution with the report. If there is any specific question about the Ursa library itself, I invite members, I invite people to connect to the Discord server of the Ursa. Once again, I've put the URL encoded, the encoding of the barcode for the URL. I'm sorry, it's present there. And my name is Pierre Roberge. I'm happy to have shared the result with you today. Thank you for taking the time to participate today. Thank you for watching, and we'll take some Q&A right now.
And if there are questions, there's a few different ways you can ask. The Zoom chat is a good option. You can use the raise hand feature, or you could just come off mute.
David, do you want to talk a bit about the exercise in this, or your learning out of the process?
Sure. You know,
putting you on the spot.
Yeah, let me think about it. So say more about what you'd like me to cover, just about the kind of the community side of things?
Yeah, so basically, you know, this project, I think this project was really done and from a community perspective. You have a community of developer that putting sweat and time into the library. We have a community of user that's looking to adopt, and I think this was really foster and the idea that we want to, you know, how do we get ready to use Hyperledger technology into production, and doing that necessary trust but verify exercise. So this is really how our sponsor came at it. This is how the lab came at that. But from an Hyperledger standpoint, what did you? How did it go?
Well, sure. Well, in the same way that you're taking a look at the, you know, doing a review of the code for Ursa, I mean, I think if somebody's considering adopting an open source project, they, you know, they may also want to similarly do a you know, a review of the community of the code, for example, because, you know, an open source project is not just, you know, a set of code, you know, some code somewhere in some repository, right? It's the, you know, the people, the infrastructure, the ecosystem around that code, right? So just like we're doing right now, if you're interested in Ursa and you have a question and want to use it, you know, where do you go, right? You know, and so having a healthy community, getting people involved in the community, letting people know about what's happening in the community is, you know, kind of my angle on things. I'm not super technical myself, so I don't really have an opinion on the, you know, the Ursa code side of things. But in terms of, you know, is the community a place where somebody is who wants to adopt Ursa, can they go and interact and engage, you know, is really my angle. So it's great to see us talking about this. It's great to see people, you know, join, you know, and be interested in the discussion. So I would encourage people to ask questions if they have some. And I see that Tim just did post something in Zoom.
Tim, I see your question here. So I'll read the question. Were there any unexpected insight, for example, better way of architecting, better composability of solution, etc.? Unexpected, I'm not sure, unexpected mean different thing to different people, but there's a high level of care that needs to be put in the build process. And so we could argue if the build process is part of the library itself or not. But as organization are looking to adopt the library, I think it's important And because it's open source, I think you need to put a level of care, as much level of care in how your build environment is set up than the library itself, because we can have a clean library. The build process would allow for injecting potential risk into that. And so while there is some issues that have been identified as implementation cautious, they are part of the overall equation of security end to end. So I invite people to not oversee that or having this in their blind spot. I hope that answers your question, Tim.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Any other question? When you think you have for 30 minutes of material and you realize you have for 20. It's good. So I want to go back while people maybe write their question. I want to go back here. So there's today's presentation. There will be a blog that will be posted soon. Think about it as something you can for people to share within their project team or within their organization, that talk about the review, the finding, and the process. And the actual report itself, a 28-page report, I believe, is accessible is publicly accessible, and you can find it under the research menu under learning. Any other question? Not yet. Another thing, Tim, maybe I'll go back to Tim here. A question. There is a balance. There is an issue that was identified around verifying signature as part of the when you're using the library, and I think there's a performance trade-off. Where do you want to explicitly verify every single signature as you go, or not, for performance reason? There was one issue. Give me 1 second here. There was one issue that was identified along those lines. So in the libUrsa BLS module, it does not check the public key consistently. And so this has been considered in the past by the Ursa community. They're aware of this, but due to performance reason, it was not addressed or changed. The report resulted in an agreement to raise this issue again for further consideration by the Ursa community. So balance of performance and security. Is Indy in production? Well, so in Canada, there's a number of organizations that are looking at using Hyperledger technology and their rollout. My understanding. I know that Hyperledger technology broadly is used in the province of Alberta. I'm not sure exactly if they're using Indy. Maybe there's somebody else that can let us know. There's a few Canadian on the call today, but yeah, and we are aware of a number of deployment in Canada and outside of Canada where Indy or Aries and other of the technology stack source or owned at Hyperledger are being used. Here we are.
And I'm adding a link to our case studies page on the website. There are some examples of Indy being used there specifically. Here, I'll drop a specific link. Kiva, for example, is using Indy in Africa for a digital ID system there, and there are some examples. Here, I'll drop another one. This one is a case study about the CU Ledger credit unions.
Right.
And then you reference the BC Gov link. I'll drop that. The BC Gov link case studies right there as well.
So one of Tim's question is about the broader certification scheme or approach. I think there is need for broader certification and of scheme and so on. The exercise here was to review the particular implementation. I think that one of the advantage of a shared library is that that interoperability that's created by sharing the same library. Where did I add that? And so that is one way to do that. But as the marketplace open up, as there's more ecosystem or more network that are using BBS plus signature and some of the other cryptographic function that are increasingly common in digital identity, I think there will be a need for it would promote adoption if we were able to test those and ensure interoperability between different implementation. But this is over and above the particular work that was done in this report. Well, one last round of question. So I have a lot of people online, so I see a lot of name here. All right. Dave, Tim, is your microphone on?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I can ask a question, probably of a broader context. Like for me, this is an especially valuable exercise in due diligence, especially again where I came from, public sector, where you have to make strategic bets or strategic investments that are very difficult to roll back, or if there's something that is like a deficiency or an error, and it impacts like a public sector service, it's really hard to roll back and regain trust. So I just see this as a super valuable exercise for not only government, but for any sector for that matter that wants to use this as a fundamental building block for their solution. So I just want to, first of all, applaud the work. I was really excited to see this report. And it is a missing piece that's necessary in terms of the due diligence. It's beyond like a single vendor claim or even the claim of the contributors to the project. And this is just an opportunity to just see the evolution of these type of efforts into what we're seeing into some more formal standards-based and certification schemes. And that's, I just want to point this out. So this is excellent work, but there still is a need that if I was a public sector decision maker, this would give me some comfort. It would enable me to advocate for a solution with like eyes wide open reasonably on what the risk might be. And it's just another great piece to the corpus, if you will.
No, totally agree, and will echo what you're saying. I think it's part of that maturity level. I think the Ursa team has done a fantastic work in putting the library, recognizing the need for a common library, the quality of the engineering, the implementation, the documentation was visible across the code. But this, you need, and that third-party validation, arm's length, neutral validation, I think is another milestone for broader adoption by in the marketplace. And so the stage is set, I think, for a number of upcoming product rollout or service rollout. And it was also important for organizations. The other thing I'll point out, it's also important for organizations that don't use Hyperledger today. I think that broadly, if we look at the industry of digital identity, there's a number of organizations that are involved. There's a many way of getting to of implementing self-sovereign identity or other flavor of digital identity, but we are all in it together, because if one ecosystem fail miserably, it has a ripple effect on the others. There's a kind of a brand risk or an implement or a state, a risk to the state of the art. And so even if you are not using Hyperledger today in your organization, maybe you should, but I think you should take comfort in the report showing that in the technology stack of Hyperledger has been done properly, and so you can move your attention to something else, not something else, but one less point on your radar. Very good. David, do we want to conclude?
If there aren't any other questions, we certainly can. Thank you, everybody. I mean, if you do have other questions while we're here, certainly feel free to ask. And we will also be sharing these. Sorry, go ahead, Pierre.
I'm sharing the conversation can continue on the Discord server for Ursa as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. And I was going to say, I was going to share some of these links with everybody who signed up on the meetup pages, and I'll add the Discord link as well. I'll put the report and this recording and the Discord link so everybody can join us there for further discussion.
Actually, did you put the report? Okay, I could put the report for doing two things at the same time. I'll put the report to the link to the report.
Yeah, thanks for adding. I hadn't put a link to the research page, but didn't directly drop the report link. But yeah, thanks for adding that.
Give me a second here. It's when you want to find it that doesn't happen.
Looks like it just got added.
Okay. Go. Thank you, Regis. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. You have 25 minutes back in your day. And for the if you were again looking for some of the crunchy technical detail, cryptographic detail, please enjoy the report. It's available right now. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.